Praise Lord all. This is Elder Adrian Heyman. And I spent the majority of my day, of course, yesterday morning and last night. I think those of you that have seen my earlier video, you'll understand. Essentially, wife had to go back in the hospital again, but she's doing better. She's doing much better than she was when she first came in. She'll stay in there for a couple of days, but they will kick me out, and I'll come back around 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. I'll do the same thing the next day too. But she looks good. She looks good, and I can't worry about it because essentially, if I do, I wouldn't be any help to her or anybody else. And I definitely wouldn't be any help to you guys. Let me start over. That segues into the session I'm doing tonight regarding signs of the times. The one that I had done earlier was regarding the four winds in Revelation 7. And I began thinking about the four winds, because usually four winds don't really cause a problem unless they come together in chaos. And the biggest chaos there is, of course, are hurricanes. And as you know, hurricanes are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And they're more lethal, they pack a lot more punch, and they dump a lot more water than what they used to do. So essentially, when you're dealing with the four winds of Revelation 7, the interesting thing is that he wasn't going to harm anything. They was going to put a halt to it until the Lord had sealed 144,000, meaning that they were also wreaking havoc upon this place among the seals and the trumpets and all of those, the four winds, the chaos that was causing. But I only spoke last time about hurricanes. Essentially, this did not necessarily, I didn't really talk about that much about other forms of destructive winds, of which there are two that I know of, and of course there's more. One is actually something that happens in the Midwest quite a bit, has spread to the south, has spread to the east, and has even touched down on some places in the West. And I'm talking about the United States. And these wind-driven phenomena are called tornadoes. And they happen in other portions of the world too, but it's interesting that a country as rich as the United States, and we laud its plains, its mountains, its seashores, and so on. But one of the main things that the U.S. has more of are tornadoes. And it bears watching to see how much stronger those get. We really haven't talked that much about tornadoes that much. We talked about hurricanes when we dealt with climate change. We talked about hurricanes because they're bigger, they cover more ground, and in terms of total destruction, they can cause quite a bit. But tornadoes, even though they only hit a relatively narrow area of the landscape and only go on for a particular period of time, they don't last as long as hurricanes. But tornadoes can be highly destructive with winds, I believe, that can go above 200 miles an hour. We thought that hurricanes were powerful with winds that go up to 160. But with tornadoes, that's even more destructive power. And that's just wind. Doesn't talk about wind. Doesn't talk about rain. Doesn't talk about lightning. Doesn't talk about anything else. Just the wind. The most powerful storm in terms of wind is a tornado. And the way, because it twists so much and it can drop down at any time, you can get And you can get warnings about hurricanes. It's just that people just don't heed them a lot, or they're too big to be contained. But a tornado can just drop at any time. Sure, there are tornado watches and there are tornado warnings that let you know that let's say, there is a good chance that a tornado can take place. However, does not mean that a tornado will take place or won't take place, or even more important, where and when is it going to take place? You just know the general area, you know the general time, but you can't really pinpoint a tornado as of yet. And we have yet to tame them. When a tornado comes, especially if it's full power, it can be one of the most destructive natural forces on Earth. As I said before, it can hit any time and anywhere. It can hit in noonday. It can hit at midnight. It can hit at 6 a.m. It doesn't matter essentially what time of day it is, as long as the conditions are right for a swirling vortex of air to swirl violently down to the ground. It can be a very, very, for those of you in the Midwest, you know about this, and in the South even right now, it can be very scary. And as I said earlier on the other cast was dealing with dealing with hurricanes. There are some chances that a tornado can even touch down on the West Coast, because it has done that before. I remember saying this story before. There was a time where essentially we were waking up in the morning and we didn't realize it, but there was a tornado that hit close to where I lived. And I lived only a few miles south of USC. Those of you that know where that is, Broadway, Maine, Gage, Florence, that's where I used to stay for all of my childhood. And it was amazing that only a few blocks north of where we lived, a tornado hit and destroyed several houses, took the roofs off of many others. Because we weren't used to tornadoes. Tornadoes just don't hit in our area. But it just lets you know that as long as the atmospheric conditions are right, they can hit anywhere. And I truly believe that with climate change, more of that violent weather will take place. And that's what scientists are trying to tell us. But a lot of us won't listen because essentially it's science. And of course, Christianity and science are always at odds with one another. But I'm here to let you know that science many times corroborates what happens in Scripture. And Scripture many times agrees with what science has later come up with. Or have you ever heard of the Scripture that he hung the earth on nothing? Who know in those days? People thought that the earth was borne by big snakes, by turtles, by elephants. Something had to bear it up. But it says he hung the world on nothing, which lets you know that essentially the earth spins all alone in space. Nothing props it up. Nothing holds it up. It's there. So even in the Old Testament, we get to hear how science is man catching up to what God already knows. And the more you look at it, the more it appears that the glory of God is even greater than when we first believed. So let's not douse science. Let's essentially understand what science is, which is simply observations. It's observations based upon, certain ideas, facts, data, and so on, and then you try to prove it. But the more you look at it, the more you find out that science and the spiritual things and spiritual things happen to come into place, especially when it deals with prophecy. So we should take heed to what these scientists say. That the world's not going to get any better weather-wise. And of course, there's going to be droughts. There's going to be droughts that essentially, I remember we in California, a couple of years back, or maybe 3 or 4 years back, we had a stretch of time where it may be the amount of water that we received over 3 years could barely reach what we would normally get in one. And all of our water reservoirs were getting low. It was drying up. People were getting frantic. People were rationing. And essentially, it was worse in other areas of the globe. Cape Town, South Africa, almost went completely dry. And that's what some other areas of the world are going through as well. Now, I'm dealing with tornadoes, but there's also another type of wind that even though it blows in one direction, it can be extremely destructive. And I have never seen winds blow as hard as they do now. And unless you, again, shoo that away, look at what happened in California, in Los Angeles, actually. Just last year, 2 fires. One that was a remnant of another fire that firemen thought they had put out. But the winds rekindled that fire, and that became the Palisades fire. Then another fire that started off from a short-circuiting power line coming down from the mountains. That was the Eaton fire. Those two combined to, each of them became the most destructive fire emergency in LA County history. Thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of homes were destroyed. Scores of people died. And why is that? Because winds that were blowing in excess of hurricane speed, 100 miles per hour. Think about that. 100-mile-per-hour winds, and there's a fire going on. What do you think is going to happen? The fire's not only going to leap from house to house. It's going to leap entire neighborhoods, entire blocks, which is exactly what the fires did. The firemen fought bravely. They tried to save whatever they could, but they were fighting a losing battle. They can only get a handle on the fires once the winds begin to die down. And then we begin to see how horrific the scale of these fires. And then, not even that, we've been getting warnings about that all over the world. Canada has been seeing record numbers and acreage of land burnt over these last several years. The West United States, not just California, although California's a big part of it, but in Oregon and Washington and Montana and Idaho, in New Mexico. These fires essentially are destroying large swaths of land that you didn't hear about before. And you got Australia, even today, this year, they have to deal with another huge fire in the southern hemisphere. Not to mention the fires that are going on in the Amazon that are destroying huge areas of rainforest. Europe, Greece, France, Spain. Every year they set records for amount of acreage destroyed. And not only does it have to deal with wind and heat, that then reminds you of another judgment that God will place upon the world. And if you look at the first trumpet sound, And I believe that's the 8th chapter of Revelation, the first one, where it talks about a third of all the forests will burn away, and all of the green grass. Now understand that grass will grow back. That's the way it does. It dies during the summer, grows back whenever rain touches it. But the drier this climate gets, the hotter this climate gets, and the windier this climate gets, the more we're going to see an unbelievably huge swaths of land that's being chewed up by the ravages of fire. That should let you know that these things coming together, it's not a coincidence. These elements taking place that are happening upon this planet is because God is letting these things happen. It wasn't even thought of in John's day. Who would have thought that a third of all the forest and all green grass can be burned? Even right now, it boggles the mind. But for those who have suffered through these fires, who've seen the destructive power, it has destroyed entire portions of cities. Entire towns have been leveled to the ground and burned. I remember just a few weeks ago, I took my wife on a drive through Angeles Crest Highway. Many of you may know that road. It goes upon the top of the San Gabriel Mountains and winds its way through. And it goes all the way from close to the Cajon Pass, all the way through the La Cañada. So it's a long road, passing beautiful forests, trees of, all this nature so close to the LA basin. Or was. When we got up there, before we got to Wrightwood, remember that fire last year that happened to hit that area? It burned all the way around Wrightwood. It was only by, I believe, the bravery of the firemen that were there that kept Wrightwood from being totally consumed. But when you were going towards the road, going on the road that approached Wrightwood, you could just see, as far as you can see, burnt husk of trees. And you end up Wrightwood and to all the trees before said, well, it looks wonderful. And you looked on the other side, burnt again. And it was popping on and off and on in terms of the scenery. 1 minute, trees just here and there. Another minute, whole landscape like a moonscape almost, of just stumps left. Unfortunately, we couldn't travel the entire way. We had to actually take a detour and go through Palmdale and then come back up the hills, then come back down to La Cañada. Made it a very long drive. But anyway, that kept in my mind how we have allowed our environment to eat itself. And people say, well, that's man's wrath. No, it's not. It's God's wrath that he allows these things to take place. Let us know how close we are to his coming. Now, we are not in the days of the first trumpet. I want to make sure you know that. We're not in the days of the first trumpet. But everything is setting up for it. The climate is setting up for it. The propensity of man to build their houses real close to burnable wilderness is growing. The heat that allows the air to bake whole forests dry, to actually kill some of these trees with drought and weaken them from, natural pests that end up destroying them from the inside. So when the fires come, it's just fire kindling. And it just skips from top to top to top of the trees. And I think these movies or these shows that are coming out, Fire Country and so on, it just tells you a bit of how ferocious and voracious these fires can be. But more than just being a good show, these are also what I am including in what I'm going over this series. And we'll be going over there for quite a bit of time now. Signs of the times. Why? Because there are a lot of signs of the times to let you know we are in the last days. So we should be about our Father's business. And we should not be getting saved. We should be saved. So do what you got to do, for the time is short. God bless you in Jesus' name.